Hey everyone, hello. So today, we're stepping across a threshold, one that appears again and again in esoteric traditions, anthropology, mystery schools, and fraternal orders. It's the distinction between the initiate and the profane mind. This is not a moral judgment. It's not about who is good or bad, enlightened or ignorant. Instead, it's about orientation. A difference is how reality itself is perceived, structured, and experienced. To understand this distinction is to understand how human beings have, for thousands of years, marked the passage from ordinary life into meaning, from surface appearances into depth, and from chaos into cosmos. Let's start out by clearing up a common misunderstanding. In everyday language, profane often implies something vulgar, corrupt, or even disrespectful. But in its original sense, particularly in esotericism and anthropology, profane simply means outside the sacred space. The Latin root profanum literally means before the temple. So the profaned mind is not evil or stupid, it's simply uninitiated. The profane individual lives fully within the ordinary world, the world of work, survival, status, consumption, and immediate gratification. Life is experienced as fragmented, reactive, and largely shaped by external forces. From this perspective, reality is mostly literal, meaning it's mostly instrumental. Value is measured in utility, comfort, and success. This is the world of what Mircea Eliade called profane space, a space without a fixed center, where time flows horizontally, from one moment to the next without deep symbolic rupture. The initiate, by contrast, is someone who has undergone a rite of passage, whether formal or informal, that permanently alters their relationship with reality. Initiation is not simply learning new information, it is about transformation of consciousness. Across cultures, initiation follows a remarkably consistent structure. Separation. The individual is removed from their former identity. Liminality, a threshold phase of disorientation, trial, or symbolic death. And then reintegration, return to society with a new status, role, or vision. Anthropologist Arnold van Gennep and later Victor Turner emphasized that this liminal phase is where the real transformation occurs. The initiate is betwixt and between no longer who they were, not yet who they will become. This is where certainty dissolves, where old assumptions are challenged, where identity becomes fluid, and it is often uncomfortable, sometimes even deliberately so. One of the deepest contrasts between the profane mind and the initiate lies in how reality is interpreted. The profane view of reality is flat and literal. Objects are just objects. Events are random and purely casual, and time is linear and repetitive. Life, in this mode, lacks a transcendent center. Meaning must be manufactured, chased, or consumed. On the other hand, the initiate's view of reality. The initiate experiences the world as symbolic. The outer world reflects inner truths. Everyday events carry archetypal significance. Space becomes sacred when aligned with meaning, and time becomes mythic, layered, and cyclical. In Iliade's framework, the initiate no longer lives in chaos, but in cosmos, a structured, meaningful universe oriented around sacred principles. The world becomes a text to be read, not just a surface to be used. This brings us to another key contrast: knowledge versus wisdom. In many esoteric traditions, the profane are described as being outside the temple. They may see the walls, admire the architecture, and speculate about what happens inside, but they lack access to inner rites. The initiate, however, gains interior knowledge, symbolic literacy, discernment rather than accumulation of facts, and understanding that transforms the knower. In Kabbalistic and esoteric philosophy, this is sometimes framed as profane intellect, conventional reasoning, useful for survival and social order. Sacred intellect is intuitive discernment that perceives hidden relationships and divine patterns. Likewise, profane emotion is reactive, driven by appetite, fear, and impulse, while the initiate cultivates emotional awareness and mastery. This is not suppression, but integration. Freemasonry offers one of the clearest modern examples of this symbolic distinction. In Masonic language, the profane is simply anyone not initiated into the craft. The lodge represents sacred space. Initiation is a symbolic death and rebirth. The initiate is blindfolded, disoriented, and tested, not to humiliate, but to dramatize the psychological experience of leaving the familiar world behind. The message is clear. You cannot see until you admit that you are blind. And you cannot enter until you knock. The initiate does not become superior, but responsible for deeper insight. Anthropologically, initiation is everywhere. Tribal rites of passage, shamanic death and rebirth experience, mystery schools of Egypt, Greece, and Rome, religious conversion narratives. In each case, the initiate moves from disorder to order, nature to culture, and ignorance to meaning. Iliade emphasized that initiation is how humans escape the terror of meaningless time. Through sacred narratives and rituals, life becomes anchored in something eternal. Without initiation, the individual remains psychologically fragmented, living in what Iliade called the tyranny of the ordinary. And one final crucial point: modern society has largely abolished authentic initiation. We have education, credentials, and consumption, but few true rites of passage that transform identity at a deep level. As a result, many adults remain psychologically uninitiated. Meaning is sought through status, ideology, or excess. Liminal crises appear as anxiety, depression, or existential emptiness. From the esoteric perspective, much modern Suffering stems not from trauma alone, but from unfinished initiation. The hunger for meaning is the call to the threshold. So the distinction between the initiate and the profane mind is not about exclusion, it's about readiness. The profane state is not wrong, it is simply the beginning. Initiation begins the moment someone asks, "Is there more than this?" and then dares to step beyond the familiar. So, if you found this episode meaningful, reflect on this question. What thresholds are you standing before? And what might it cost you to cross them? That's it for today's video. As always, I hope you found it entertaining, enlightening, or in some way beneficial. If you did, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and share the video with a friend or two. All right, everyone, take care. Peace.